A shy girl, hiding entire worlds inside sketches no one had ever seen, until the day a millionaire designer, still reeling from the greatest collapse of his career, picked up a folded drawing she'd dropped in the chaos of a crowded fair. He didn't know her name, but in one glance he saw it all. The loneliness, the dream left behind, the quiet ache she never dared to speak. Sometimes the reason we step into the light isn't because we're ready. It's because someone was patient enough to wait for us to arrive. Every morning, before sunlight fully reached the small attic at the end of the old quarter, Emma would sit by the window, brush in hand, but not painting. She would sit like that for a long time, in silence, as if listening for something deep. Within herself, her room was small but peaceful. The walls were lined with sketches, none of them framed. Some were half-finished, soft pencil lines, faint washes of color, like whispered breaths. She taped them gently with paper tape, as if afraid of hurting them. No one had ever seen those drawings except the sunlight. It wasn't that Emma didn't want to share. She had tried once and been laughed at. A single comment at 18, "Why? Does your style feel so out of place?" was enough to make her put the brush away for 2 years. Later, when she began again, she chose to keep it to herself. This morning was no different. And yet something shifted. An art fair flyer pressed between the pages of an old sketchbook slipped out as she was tidying her shelf. The paper was creased, one corner smudged, but its image was vivid. Paintings in full color, and across the top, bold letters, "Every brushstroke is a story. Come share yours." Emma stared at it for a long while. No, she wasn't planning to participate, but maybe just a visit, just to feel something, just a weekend walk. At noon, she stepped into the fair, tucked into a small square. White canvas tents rising like soft sails in the sunlight. The air carried the scent of paint and linen, a low hum of music from an old speaker, and children weaving through the aisles with cotton candy and balloons in hand. She walked slowly, her face almost hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. The work was beautiful. Abstract pieces, intimate portraits, hand-embroidered cloth stitched with care. She didn't bring anything to display. Just a small sketchbook, out of habit, like always. And maybe it was this unintentional detail that started it all. Near the end of the row, she paused before a watercolor painting, simple, balanced, quiet in its tones. In a distracted moment, she dropped her sketchbook without noticing. Breeze flipped it open. One page in the middle, last night's drawing. A girl standing with her back turned, in a sunset field, silent and full of unspoken emotion. It wasn't perfect, but it felt true. Nearby, a man noticed. He stepped forward, picked up the book. His hand hovered over the sketch. He didn't know what he was looking at, but it stopped him. The bowed figure, the solitude in the soft orange light, the way the sky seemed to break open, it mirrored something he'd once felt. The night his mother died. He didn't know Emma was turning back to find it. When she saw him, standing, still holding the sketchbook, his eyes caught on her drawing, she froze. She wanted to pull back, to turn away, to disappear. But then the man looked up. His gaze met hers, not skeptical, not judging, only open, present, and gently moved. "Did you draw this?" he asked. His voice was quiet, unassuming. Emma said nothing. Her heart was racing, like someone had just peeled back. Her last layer of armor. "I'm sorry," and she murmured, reaching for the book. "I dropped it." He nodded but didn't leave. His eyes returned to the sketch. "There's something very honest in this," he said. "It touched me. As if you've been in that moment." For the first time, Emma really looked at him. His face was familiar, and then she realized. Noah Harven, the designer behind the nature-inspired fashion label everyone was talking about. Why would someone like him be standing here talking to someone like her? She gave a small, awkward smile. "I just draw to breathe." "Sometimes the things we make to breathe," Noah replied, "help others find themselves again." The words made her pause. Something tiny, like light, stirred inside. Hurt just enough that when she got home she didn't tear out the drawing. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She sat at her desk, placed the sketchbook before her, and opened to that page again. Her hand hovered over the pencil marks, tracing the lines like they belonged to someone else's story. She remembered Noah's gaze. It hadn't seen her as an amateur. It had seen her as a storyteller, and the story mattered. She reached for a new sheet of paper. Her pencil rolled softly. A stroke of orange began to take shape. In the corner of the page, she wrote a small line. Not for anyone else, just for herself. Maybe it's worth trying again. The next morning, Emma's attic was as quiet as ever. But inside her, something had shifted. She held a brush, but instead of painting, her fingers traced the paper's edge, thin and cool. She had been sitting like that for nearly an hour, staring at the blank sheet, then back at yesterday's sketch. The girl standing in the sunset field was still there. Silent, motionless, just like her. The doorbell rang, soft, tentative. Emma startled. She almost never had visitors. In truth, she couldn't remember the last time someone came. Through the peephole, she saw a man in a grey coat, back turned, holding a paper bag of coffee. His brown hair tousled slightly in the wind. She recognized the posture. Noah. She didn't know how he'd found her address, perhaps from the notebook, but she opened the door anyway, quietly, carefully. "Good morning," he said with a gentle smile, holding out the bag. "I thought you might be painting this morning. Brought some caffeine." Emma almost declined, but something in his smile stopped her. She nodded, just barely. They sat by the window. 2 cups of coffee steaming quietly between them, a space still untouched by conversation. Noah didn't push. He waited. "Have you drawn anything since?" he asked eventually. Emma shook her head. "I'm not sure if I should." Noah set his cup down, tilting his head slightly, his gaze steady, not pitying but full of something more. "Difficult to name. Belief. There's a community project," he said. "We're looking for an artist to paint the mural on the old cultural center. It's not for press, just a way to bring the town together." He paused. "I'd like to invite you." The room tightened. The warmth they'd shared a moment ago seemed to pull away, just a little. Emma lowered her gaze. "No," she whispered, so soft he barely heard it. "I don't draw for others to see." Noah didn't respond immediately. He simply looked at her for a long moment, then nodded, without pressure, without disappointment. "All right. But if you ever change your mind, the invitation stays." He rose, lifted his empty cup, and turned to leave. When the door clicked shut behind him, the room returned to stillness. But inside her, something lingered. A quiet echo that refused to fade. That afternoon, the sky turned to rain. Spring rain, gentle, not cold. The kind that makes you want to sit by a window and think of everything unfinished. Emma pulled out the old sketch again. But this time she didn't tape it to the wall. She laid it flat on the desk and opened her box of paints. Not for the invitation, not for Noah, just because she needed to hear her own voice again, in silence. Each brushstroke, each pencil line guided her back to a part of herself that had been quiet for too long. She remembered being a child, when her parents were still alive, and she would sit by the window drawing flowers for her mother, sketching the piano her father never got to buy. Back then, no one told her her lines were strange. No one laughed, only her mother's soft voice. "You're drawing your feelings. I can see them." Outside, raindrops tapped the glass. Memory, too, was knocking. She began anew. Painting. A face half-formed, maybe hers, maybe someone she hadn't met yet. In the eyes of the figure, something fragile stirred, something trying to emerge from shadow. She didn't know what she was agreeing to, but clearly her hands were telling a story. Words couldn't. Evening fell. A golden lamp lit the desk. The new painting was halfway finished. She hadn't painted it for anyone, but a quiet question crept in. If Noah saw this, what would he see? She picked up her phone. His number was still there. Short, direct, no added invitation. She didn't call. She only looked at it. And then, for reasons she couldn't explain, she set an early alarm for the next day. At the bottom corner of the unfinished page, She wrote a tiny line, barely visible. "If no one ever sees, how will they know I was here?" That morning the sunlight was gentle, a pale gold veil draped softly over the ground, like a dream not yet fully awake. Emma stood before the old cultural center. The grey brick walls, weathered by time, loomed like a stage without a curtain. The wall in front of her stretched nearly 10 meters wide and so high she had to tilt her head to see it all. It was empty, blindingly white, like a blank page waiting for something. She could hear her heart beating, not from creative excitement but fear. Fear that she wasn't good enough, that the first stroke might ruin the wall in a way that couldn't be undone. Behind her a few volunteers were setting up, tables of paint, buckets of water, clean cloths. They chatted softly, moved easily. No one was paying attention to her, and that was both a relief and a quiet kind of loneliness. Noah walked up, silent, unhurried. He didn't come too close. He simply set a box of paints at her feet and said, "You don't have to start. Right away." His voice was calm, as if they were sharing tea, not facing a 10-meter wall asking for talent. "Just stand here. Breathe a little." Emma nodded. She didn't speak, but she stayed. Noah didn't press further. He stepped away, leaving her alone with the wall and with the emptiness inside herself. An hour passed. Emma hadn't drawn a thing. She wandered along the edge, studying printed sketches pinned as inspiration. Suggestions for layout, color palettes, leafy greens for trees, rust orange for human figures. Everything was clear, except her. She picked up a brush, set it down, exhaled, stillness. Then a child approached her. A girl, small, wide-eyed. She stared up at Emma for a long time, then asked, voice bright and unfiltered, "Are you the one painting the wall?" Emma smiled faintly, didn't answer. The girl tried again. "Do you know how to draw a deer? My mum said there used to be real deer here a long time ago, but now there aren't any." Something about that made Emma look up. She turned back to the wall, then glanced at the paint buckets. Not a face, not a flower, but a deer. Not real, maybe, but a memory the town hadn't let go of. The first stroke of her brush trembled. Emma's hand moved not with certainty, but with a kind of listening, not just to the child, but to a quiet voice inside herself. The first brown curve, a gentle arc, maybe an antler, maybe a shoulder. No one could tell yet, but from a distance Noah paused. He didn't say a word. He just watched. Then came another line, a slender green stroke, like underbrush. Then a longer, softer arc, like the deer's neck, bowing. The wall was no longer white, and Emma's heart no longer clenched with every stroke. People walking by began to notice. A few volunteers leaned in, watched, then quietly returned to their work, no one interrupting, as if they sensed this moment needed reverence. Noah stayed quiet, but his eyes never left her brush. By late afternoon, a small part of the wall had taken shape, not perfect, but alive. A slender deer stood quietly in the open space, half surrounded by nothing, yet already grounded in presence, like it was waiting to be joined by something more. Emma wiped her hands. She hadn't said a word since morning, but there was something different in her eyes. Noah stepped forward. Slowly. "You've begun," he said. Emma nodded. This time she looked him straight in the eye. "I don't know if I'll finish it," she said softly. "But I think it needed to begin." Noah smiled. He didn't say, "I believe in you." He simply said, "Not everyone is brave enough to face the first white wall." Emma lowered her head, but only to hide the small smile playing on her lips. In the corner of the wall where weeds grew from broken bricks, a sparrow had landed. Emma saw it, and for the first time, in a public space, she wanted to keep painting. Each day after that, Emma arrived a little earlier. She stood before the old wall, adding a few quiet strokes before anyone else appeared. She loved that time, when the morning light hadn't fully dried and the colors still breathed against the damp concrete. Noah came early too. Not to supervise, just to be nearby. Each morning he placed a cup of coffee on the small table near the paint buckets, never asking her preference. It was always black, hot, no sugar. Strangely, that was exactly how she liked it. There was something unspoken between them, something not yet named. On Tuesday afternoon after lunch it began to rain. Everyone took shelter inside. The room behind the mural was an old gallery, unused but clean. The air held the scent of damp wood and aging paper. Familiar in a comforting way, Emma sat at a low wooden table drying her brushes when Noah entered, holding a faded sketch printed on soft-colored paper. He placed it between them. "An idea for the left panel," he said, pointing to the far corner of the mural still blank. "I thought it might need an open scene, maybe a window looking out onto a field." Emma studied it. It wasn't finished, but it was thoughtful. The way Noah handled space gave the image room to breathe, a quiet rhythm, understated and deep. "You drew this?" "Does?" she asked, surprised. Noah smiled. "I studied fine art before I went into design. Switched to fashion because, well, I needed to make a living." Emma nodded, understanding. She looked again at the sketch, then blurted, "Aren't you afraid of being judged?" Noah paused, but instead of answering, he asked gently, "Have you ever been judged?" Emma tightened her grip on the old brush in her hand. Then, slowly, like a valve opening, she began to speak. Her eyes fixed not on him, but on the rain slipping down the glass. "In art school, I once submitted a portrait, unfinished. Just the eyes. The teacher said, 'You should learn to draw for others, not to cry through your work.' The class laughed. She exhaled. I didn't come back for 3 weeks. Her voice wasn't sharp. It didn't ache anymore. It was just the echo of something that had hurt for a long time and finally stopped bleeding. After that, I stopped drawing for people. I just draw in silence, to breathe." Noah said nothing. He didn't reach for his coffee. He didn't interrupt. He simply stayed. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, watercolor light. "Those eyes, do you still have that piece?" Emma smiled faintly. "I do, in an old box under my bed." Noah nodded, then pulled the sketch back toward him. He added a single stroke, then turned it to face her again. In the corner of the window, he'd drawn a pair of eyes. "No full face, just a gaze looking out toward the field. This is a shared panel," he said. "I want to paint it with you, one piece at a time, if you'd like." Emma stared at the eyes he'd drawn. Though the lines were his, she felt something of herself inside them, not just the look, but the emotion that had once been hidden away. She nodded gently. "Let's try." Noah smiled, a quiet kind of smile, not triumphant, just aligned. He didn't say, "I believe in you." He simply handed her the pencil, and as the rain whispered beyond the windows, they began sketching the first corner of the story. Together, through silence, through color, through the slow dissolving of old fears, warmed by presence. As she left later that evening, Emma paused once more in front of the wall. The left panel had taken form, just the beginning, but already meaningful. She looked at the lines she and Noah had drawn together, then turned toward the paint table. There, folded neatly, was a piece of paper. She opened it, in careful handwriting, one single line. "When someone sees what you've hidden most, that isn't fear, it's a beginning." That morning, the sky was draped in fog. A thin veil of mist clung to the old bricks of the cultural center. The air smelled of wet earth after rain, and a chill slipped through the fabric of Emma's light jacket. She arrived earlier than usual, not to paint but to hide from the eyes that might be watching. On a stone bench near the mural, she opened her phone. The screen lit up with a flood of notifications, messages, emails, posts where she'd been tagged. Her hands trembled. Last night, someone from the volunteer group had filmed her painting and posted it online. The video was short, just under a minute, but it captured her in profile, bathed in late afternoon light, painting a pair of eyes on the wall. The eyes, the ones she'd once described to Noah. Hundreds of shares, dozens of comments, praising, admiring. People called her the anonymous artist healing the town. Others speculated about who she was. Some even reached out to buy her work. She didn't know how to feel. Joy? Fear? Disbelief? Something in her was being pulled into the light, too fast, too suddenly, like a door had swung open. Before she'd had the chance to steady herself, from a distance, Noah saw her. She was standing still in front of the mural, no brush in hand, not moving closer. He didn't ask. He just came and stood beside her like he had since the beginning. "They're talking about you," he said, his voice low, as if it were no more than a passing detail. Emma nodded. "I know. And you're wondering if you should keep going." She was silent. Then, after a long pause, she whispered, "Why aren't you afraid?" Noah looked out at the unfinished wall. Half of it had taken shape now. The first deer, the eyes framed in the window, a hand reaching from the shadow of a tree. "I was," he said. "The first time one of my collections was torn apart by critics, I didn't design anything for a year. I thought it was over." Emma turned, waiting. "Then one day," he continued, "a child came running through the park wearing one of those pieces. It was from the line everyone hated. She hugged her mother and laughed like the world couldn't touch her. It wasn't about the clothes. She felt like herself in it." He exhaled, his gaze distant. "I realized I don't make things for everyone. Just enough to reach someone. One person is enough." His words landed gently inside her, not with a crash, but a quiet ripple, waking something old and fragile. Emma remembered the attic, her mother sitting cross-legged on the floor, sewing a blouse. "What did you draw today?" she had asked. Emma, 8 years old, had proudly shown her a drawing of them eating ice cream. Her mother had smiled and said, "My favorite part is the mouth. Look how wide you drew your own smile." She used to draw with love, not with fear. Emma didn't know when she started crying. The tears came softly, without sound, without sobs. They simply felt. Noah didn't touch her. He didn't speak, but he stayed close, just close enough for her to know she wasn't alone. When the wave of emotion passed, Emma walked toward the paint table. She reached for her usual brush, the wooden handle worn smooth from being held too often. She didn't say a word, but her hand began to move. The first stroke, long, curved, strong, like a heartbeat finding its rhythm again. She painted hair, windswept, faceless, full of feeling. Then, an embrace from behind, arms circling, a silent memory of warmth. The volunteers paused. They watched her, not filming, not photographing, just witnessing, respectfully. Quietly, Noah stepped back, leaning against the opposite wall. He didn't need to stand beside her anymore, because she was finally standing where she belonged. By sunset, a large section of the mural had come to life. In the golden light, details glowed into clarity. The deer between seasons, the window opening onto a field, the eyes looking forward, and now a moment of love. Unnamed, unseen faces, but all feeling. Emma set down her brush and exhaled. Noah approached and handed her a bottle of water. She smiled. For the first time in days, it was a tired smile, but light. "Thank you," she said, "for not letting me run." Noah replied softly, like the truth had always been there, waiting. "I didn't hold you back. The mural just wasn't ready to let you go yet." The morning light spilled softly over the street outside the cultural center. Sunlight coated the old bricks in gold, warm and slow, like honey poured from a quiet dream. A sparrow landed on the edge of the tiled roof. Emma stood a few steps, away from the mural. Today was the final day, the day to complete the painting. The colors had dried, the details had been refined, everything was nearly done. All that was left was one last cloud, not a centerpiece, just a gentle patch of sky. But to Emma, it was a farewell. Brush in hand, she walked toward while volunteers were already cleaning up paint tables, folding tents, preparing for the afternoon unveiling. The news had spread. People talked about the deer mural as if it were a new symbol of a town finally shedding its old skin. The townspeople would come, so would the press, possibly even the mayor. But Noah wasn't there. Emma. Hadn't realized she was hoping to see him, but when her eyes searched the growing crowd and didn't find him, something dropped quietly in her chest, like a bead of color falling from a palette. Unnoticed, she painted the cloud. Her hand was steady now. No more trembling like in those first days. The stroke was smooth, soft, but her gaze wasn't focused. It seemed to be looking through the paint, through the wall itself, into something she hadn't named yet. She didn't cry. She wasn't quite sad, but there was an emptiness in her, a blank space left untinted. That afternoon the small plaza filled. Children waved balloons. Adults mingled, chatted, cameras rolled. Reporters interviewed organizers. The mural became the backdrop to every glance, every smile. Emma sat among the rows of folding chairs. No makeup, no bright clothes. Just a pale linen dress and a scarf tied loosely in her hair. Some people recognized her, some didn't, but all looked at her with quiet admiration. The mayor gave a speech. Someone recounted the mural's journey. A volunteer mentioned the quiet artist, and Emma bowed her head just slightly. In her hands was her sketchbook, old, worn, but now filled with many new pages. After the ribbon was cut, people approached the mural. They took photos, whispered praise. A little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve, pointing to the deer. "Mum, that's just like the dream I had." Emma smiled and gently tousled the girl's hair. It should have been her happiest moment, and it was. But also it wasn't. Noah hadn't come. No one mentioned him. No one knew how he had painted beside her quietly, how he mixed the colors in the early mornings, how he washed her brushes when her hands shook. He didn't need to be seen, but she had wanted him there. That night, Emma returned to her small attic. The room was unchanged. A soft breeze drifted in through the window, carrying the scent of fresh paint from the collar of her dress. She hung up her apron, cleaned her palette, tucked her brushes into their box. It was over. She opened her sketchbook. The final page held a drawing of an open door, not used in the mural, but something she'd sketched quietly for herself. Then her phone lit up with a message, not from Noah, just one of the organizers, offering congratulations and a link to the press coverage. Emma clicked through photo after photo until one made her stop. It was him, Noah, standing at a distance in the crowd while she painted that final day. He hadn't stepped forward, hadn't entered the spotlight. He had just watched. The side of his face caught in soft focus was gentle, distant. Emma stared for a long time. Maybe he had come. Maybe he hadn't wanted to be seen. Or maybe he hadn't known if he was allowed. That night, she sat at her window, chin resting in her hand. Moonlight spilled across her face, and softly, to no one, or maybe to him, or maybe just to herself, she whispered, "Thank you for believing in the part of me I forgot was still there." Sunday morning, spring had begun to thread its way into the branches outside her window. Light spilled across the drawing table like a sheer veil, gently stirring the edges of drying paper. Emma sat in silence, staring at an unfinished sketch. The mural was complete, but her thoughts were somewhere else. Not at the wall, not among the crowds, but caught in a gaze that hadn't returned since the ceremony. Noah hadn't come back. No messages, no quiet congratulations, no explanation. She tried to tell herself he was busy, that maybe his part in the story had ended. But a quiet emptiness inside her kept growing. Not loudly, not urgently, just a silence that stretched and stretched, like music cut off mid-note. She went to the cafe they used to visit, where they'd once sat and talked about color palettes. Noah's usual chair sat empty. She still ordered black coffee, no sugar, by habit, but this time no one drank it with her. The owner, a middle-aged woman, placed a small cookie next to her cup. "Your young friend not with you today?" Emma smiled faintly and shook her head. "Haven't seen him in a while." The woman looked at her with a gentle, knowing gaze. "Some people don't say goodbye," she said softly. "They just hope they'll be remembered enough. The words hit Emma like a ripple across still water. Not a drowning, but their quiet soaking in. That afternoon, Emma returned to the mural. No reason, just longing. The painting was intact, the colors still fresh, but standing before it, Emma no longer felt what she used to. She didn't see herself in the image anymore, only the empty space on the left where she and Noah once sketched together. An old volunteer friend, Clara, passed by and waved. "Emma, you're in the national paper. There's a photo of you and everything." Emma smiled, just enough. Clara came closer, studied her face, tilted her head. "You doing okay?" Emma meant to nod, but then she didn't. She shook her head. Just a little. Clara didn't pry. She simply said gently, "Some people need to be named. Not because they want attention, but because they're afraid they've stopped mattering." That night, Emma sat alone in her room. The breeze stirred the curtain. On her table lay the sketch Noah had once given her, the window opening out onto the field. In the bottom right corner, the pencil lines were still unfinished, waiting for her. She picked up her pencil, but instead of shading in the lines, she paused, then wrote in small letters beneath the frame, "It's not that I drew better because of you. It's that when you looked, I dared to draw myself." The next morning, Emma stood in front of the building where Noah worked. In her hands, she held a new sketch, uncolored. It showed a mural scene, like the one they'd made. But this time, there were two figures, one at each end of the wall, looking toward each other. She didn't know what she'd say if she saw him. She only knew she had to come, had to say something, anything. Otherwise, everything would remain a blank space, never painted in. She glanced at her reflection in the glass door. Hair neatly tied back, the same scarf around her neck, and eyes that no longer held fear. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The sky that day was a strange, perfect blue, not a cloud in sight. The sunlight fell evenly, gentle, as if the whole world had agreed to step aside, to set the stage for something small, but important. Emma arrived early at the mural wall. In her hand, a small box of paints, a few brushes, and a folded sketch tucked into the pocket of her coat. No one knew she was coming. No event was planned, just an ordinary day, at least for the world. For Emma, it was a day to finish something that had never quite ended. She stood before the mural, now a beloved symbol of the town. Every brushstroke was still vivid. The deer, the window, the eyes, the wind-blown hair. But near the base of the wall, tucked into a tiny corner, was a blank space. No one else had noticed. Emma had saved it. From the very beginning. She took out her brush. Her hand trembled, not from fear, but from something quieter, like writing a letter long withheld. The brush touched the wall, a curve, a soft loop. She painted two figures, no faces, no fanfare, just two silhouettes sitting side by side, backs against the wall. Each held a brush. They weren't looking at each other, but they were close. Between them, a tiny sketch, Emma's first drawing, lovingly redrawn in miniature. She didn't add names, no caption, but anyone who had watched them would understand. Then one last touch, a sparrow lifting off from the girl's shoulder. Light, barely there. A small exhale. When she finished, Emma stepped back. She looked. Then, quietly, she reached into her coat pocket, pulled out a piece of folded paper. She wrote on it, just a few lines. "You didn't save me from fear. You simply stood beside me until I didn't want to run anymore. If you read this today, know that I'm still sitting on the left, waiting for you to bring the color." She folded the note and taped it beneath the new sketch. Not loud. Not hidden. Just enough that the right eyes might find it. Then she walked away. The wind passed softly through the trees behind her, carrying the scent of sun-warmed leaves. She didn't expect anything. Didn't know if he'd read it. Didn't even know if he still cared, but that wasn't the point. She had said what needed saying in her way. That afternoon, Emma returned home. She opened the windows, let the curtains breathe. She didn't draw. She simply sat, eyes closed. The hours passed slowly, like the last track of a film score playing just for her. As dusk fell, her phone rang. She didn't rush to answer. When she finally opened it, there was one message, no words, just a photo. Her sketch, 2 figures, the sparrow mid-flight, and below it, a new brushstroke in red ink. One quiet line. "You forgot to choose my color." Emma laughed, a real laugh, soft but true. She stepped outside, walking slowly without urgency, toward the mural wall. The last light of day clung to the bricks like memory. Noah was already there. He wasn't holding anything, didn't say anything, just looked at her, the same way he had looked the first time when he'd held her sketch for the first time and simply saw her. Emma didn't speak. She stood beside him. No questions, no need. A long silence settled. Then Noah, voice barely, louder than breath, said, "Thank you for not letting the painting end without its last line." Emma smiled. No tears, no grand declarations, just standing side by side and looking together at what they had made, from ache to tenderness. If you've ever kept something soft and sacred hidden inside, may this story touch that place, the one that only needs a single person to truly see it for you to find the courage to step into the light. And if it made you smile, even just in your heart, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let's keep telling these quiet, aching stories of healing gently, always gently.